Welcome to the new podcast. I've not done one of these before. This music is pretty cool. I'm with Naomi, who, if you don't know, is my wife, and this is the Everything Creative podcast. I'm going to have to get so much better at that as we go. Hi, Naomi.
I think it sounds good.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think it all sounds pretty slick.
So, if anyone who doesn't know, I make YouTube videos with my wife, Naomi, and she's also the... What's your title in our company?
The boring admin lady.
She's not the boring admin lady. Well, if you don't know, I'm a designer, handwriting artist, author, and I make YouTube videos as well. And basically, we're doing a podcast, and it's called Everything Creative because we've wanted to do it for a while. Well, I have.
Yeah.
Yeah?
And now's the time.
Yeah, so we're just getting used to it. We've got this new equipment to try and do it even better. We've got a lot of improvement. Just like anything that we do, we want to do it to the best of our ability. But the idea of today and the idea of podcasting today is all about, I don't know, just basically to chat with you guys in a different medium.
Yeah, just giving it a go. Why not?
So I'm going to list a few things before we get into what we're talking about today. So the idea of this podcast, I've got it in my head now, is so we can interview people, have a chat. You guys on your commute to work or whatever you want to do can listen. It's going to be live on YouTube at some point as well, or maybe not live, but there'll be a video version where you can see us if you prefer to watch our faces. But the idea is to interview, be inspired, look at everything creative, not just in the design realm, not just in, the art realm, but anything, engineering, music, album art covers, branding. And of course, we're going to be talking a lot about branding. So what do you think of that, Naomi?
I think that sounds very good. I'm looking forward to it.
Like, how would you critique my intro to that? Was that good or bad?
It was a solid 7.5 out of 10.
Solid 7. That's not that's not a solid number at all, is it really? Let's be honest.
I think it's good.
Right. Okay. I'll take the 7. I will take the 7.
7.5.
The 7.5. Okay. The 0.5 at the end of the 7. Brilliant. So today I thought, to kick the podcast off in all its glory, I would talk about design trends, because this is something that a lot of people, especially in the design community, talk about in regards to design. Should you use trends? Shouldn't you use trends? How do we get trends? Who makes these trends up? And how do I know about them before other people do? First of all, I want to ask Naomi what she thinks about the trends. Have you seen any design trends, or do you know of any that I haven't told you about at least?
I think, well, you always seem to know what they are and how they're going to transpire, like when you've made videos on your predicted trends in the past. You've always pretty much hit the nail on the head, but I think that's because you're so aware of the design world and what's happening and what's coming up.
Yeah, I spend a lot of time looking into it, don't I? Seeing the companies
and seeing what's sort of popular and up and coming, and then you can make some psychic predictions from there. Psychic predictions,
yeah. The funny thing is, and design trends, it doesn't matter what your opinion about them is, there's always going to be a trend. And really all a trend is someone who, or a group of people creating the same content that's similar. So for instance, I make a video every year about, the top 5, the top 10 best trends, or the ones that everyone needs to know about. And a lot of people give me flack, but I get a lot more encouragement in the video because they sort of assume that they have to take upon the trend that I'm telling them, if that makes sense, in the video. A lot of designers have got this idea that, you're supposed to stay away from trends altogether, that, we just do what we want to do because, we're designers, we're free people, free men, we're artists.
I think part of it is just fashion as well. So what was fashionable in the 80s, what was fashionable in the 90s is, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Those were trends. Those were trendy at the time, and some of them have come back round. So I don't think it's a case of, you absolutely have to follow only these things and do it like that. But you can be aware of them. It doesn't mean you have to jump on the bandwagon or only design things in monochrome or...
Yeah, no, I totally get that. You spoke of one there, monochrome, which is one that I was telling you about.
Yeah.
So I was making these videos and I was like, well, what is a proper design trend to talk about in this video? And something that I've been seeing a lot, and believe it or not, it was on Unsplash, which is a free photography website where you can like download pictures that people have taken and you get credited. So anyone can use it anywhere, but you're supposed to, I don't think you even have to be credited, but it's there for you to do it. And fun little fact, I didn't even know, but I'm one of the top 10% Unsplash photographers for downloads. Didn't even know. So my Unsplash is filled with notifications of a park bench that I took a picture of.
You need a little cheer button on your little gizmo.
I think I did have one. So if for anyone who doesn't know, this is our first podcast. Give us a break because
Will is absolutely buzzing about all the tech that he got to buy for it, including his Rodecaster Pro.
Yeah, it's not sponsored by them at all, but it's a little mixing desk that allows me to do what I need to do for podcasting. And I think nowadays is the time for us to do a podcast for people who don't mind listening to two British people ramble about creativity.
Well, now's the time to do it.
That's right. So back onto the design trend sort of saga video, whatever you want to call it. I created it talking about a few different trends, such as monochrome and crazy sans serif types. And before I show you like one of them, I'm going to show you the audio in a sec of that video. I've done it for a few years, and the funny thing I found is every time I do one of these videos, I sort of test the waters, and I'm not lying in these videos because I do see a huge trend in for instance, serif type forms. So you know what a serif type is? It's like you can see it on the chalk wall. Yeah, these people at Font Foundries were creating more and more serif typefaces that were just like beautiful and they looked really nice. And I obviously, me, I'm a proper vintage guy. I love to look at serif type forms. And I said in the video that I think we're going to start to see a lot more of the serif type forms in creative ways. Typography is going to be a huge trend in 2020. And I said that in 2019 as well, but not about serif typeforms. I think it was to do with the use of serifs. And what happened was we saw that like a few months later, GoDaddy had one of their actual main type that was on all the Instagram stuff. They started using serif type forms, which is very odd for a modern company to use. And you'll start to see a lot more people are using these. I've got this video going on and I'm going to show you just a little bit of it. You can hear the audio of it. So sit back and relax. This is me talking a bit about trends. I've been seeing a heck of a lot, and it's why it's at the top of the list, is a lot of font designers and font foundries and typeface designers are creating more and more creative fonts. For instance, Montreux Grotesque is a new typeface that was brought out not so long ago, and it's on Design Cuts. I'll link it down below. And with this typeface, it's got so many customizable options inside of it because it's open type. And it's so customizable that you can create a fully fledged logo type design out of it. So that one there, that video, I just wanted to stop it there because, as I was saying before, typography is a huge trend nowadays. We see logos that are modern, that fit within the sans serif, which is like without the serifs. That's literally what it means, without the little weird corner things on there. And I was saying on that video, talking about this new font, I think it's called Montreux, and it's one that you can create a logo with. So it's got so many ligatures, like so many ways of basically putting words together and letters together in relationships, that it makes it look completely unique, and you can like edit it within the font itself. And we're starting to see so many people doing that. Have you ever seen a font like that?
Yeah, and I think it's quite, it's quite a thing at the moment, isn't it? We've seen it, people taking pre-made fonts and then changing it to their own sort of style of it.
Yeah, like literally people doing that's all it is really nowadays. Font creation isn't just about, you have all your lowercase and your uppercase and your grammars and your brackets or whatever you want and your numbers. It's actually about the ligatures. So a huge thing, like people call them glyphs, but if you had like an E and an L in a cursive typeface, you could have multiple ways of actually linking the E and L together if that makes sense. So it's not just like a standard E&L. You can actually give the user an option to like, connect it in a different way. And anyway, I found that pretty creative, and the way that those trends sort of come about, we see them a lot. For instance, the ultra modern logos. You see them.
Just a dot.
Yeah, literally that's ultra minimal modern. You see quite a few people, like designers now, who jump on bandwagons of trends. And I'm not one for them or against them, but I think the huge part about them is to know, I've got a FaceTime call coming in. Part of the whole experience of podcasting, right? No, I think the main thing about knowing about these trends is to see where people are going, to see where companies are going.
So yeah, I totally agree. I think it's really important to be aware of the trends, but it doesn't mean necessarily that you have to abide by them, by law and be stuck to them. But it's good to be aware of them.
Yeah, because people who are creating like designers nowadays, if you stick to a trend and you're only creating trends, you're going to end up boxing yourself in to a certain style of creation. For instance, I do logo type design. So that's our main job. We brand. So if you don't know and you're watching this or listening to this, wow, I'm such a YouTuber. If you're listening to this and you're wondering what we do, we're a branding agency. We do visual brands and strategies for different companies. We've sort of become an agency, haven't we?
Yeah, it's definitely sort of transformed this past 6 months to a year.
Yeah.
Maybe just over a year actually. We've slowly sort of transitioned into, doing more agency style. And I think that suits us well at the minute as well.
I think so. Yeah. Like the problem was we were freelance at first.
Well, that's it. You were very much branded as freelance and sole trader, and we transformed into a limited company from being sole trader. And that in itself came with a whole host of new things that you have to learn when you're a company, and learning about all the things that come with that.
It's huge, yeah. So we basically became a company, like for other reasons as well, like the way that it all works with being a company. It's just a lot better. He's giving me like some eyes right now. She's saying shush. But no, like us being branding and stuff in the branding industry, knowing about these trends from different companies such as really influential ones like Nike, really influential ones like Adidas, seeing what Twitter are doing, like these huge companies, it's important to know. And when you see what they're doing, you can follow along the bandwagon, but something you can also do is back engineer their success.
Yeah, absolutely. And also being aware that, you mentioned like two sports, like shoe brands there. What works for sports and shoe and modern and young isn't going to work if you're branding, a nursery or,
it's not appropriate, is it?
Beard products, that want a vintage vibe, or do you know what I mean? You have to be aware that just because something's a trend and it sounds good on paper and looks good and is popular doesn't mean it will fit with the brand that you're trying to work with.
That's it. And we talk about that actually, or should I say I talk about that on YouTube on the channel, talking about, why your logo may not work. And when people are first starting out in design and they want to go straight into logo design, so they call themselves a logo designer, which I'm not opposed to doing because I did that. I went straight from doing general graphic design.
Facebook cover pictures, yeah.
And Facebook cover pictures. I'll tell the story about that in another episode of this. But I went straight from that into doing logo design because it was something that just resonated with me, building and creating the face of another company really sort of helped me niche down, which I've got a video coming about later. But yeah, it's about being appropriate. So trends can work if they're appropriate to the company that you're doing it. Now, visually, trends are just fashion, right? So
basically, yeah.
Everyone loves Yeezys and stuff like that. Well, they did. Not too sure now. I've never been a fan. I've got a friend called Harrison who loves Yeezys and he bought some, but they're so expensive.
You don't hear as much about them now as you would have done, 2 years ago.
No. And I don't know why. That could be something to do with the scarcity of Yeezys. I mean, certainly right now.
Well, is it a trend? Is it, you know, something that was just a must-have thing, you know, for people with money to burn?
I literally, I don't know. I think in the whole ideascape of everything, I'm just turning off a setting here because it's doing my head in. But in the whole idea of the trends in fashion, I think it does come down to scarcity. So you know that company Supreme, that brand, shall I say Supreme? The reason why people love them is not just because they've got like really comfortable clothes, which I don't even know if they do, but they sell things at a high price and they have the scarcity factor to it. So the idea is that they feel when people get it, they feel like they've got a limited number of these things.
Oh, is that what they do? Like limited amount of items?
That's called the scarcity tactic. So generally, this happens with us at work all the time. So you may not see it, but when you start to understand it, which is we can only work on so many projects at once.
It's true, yeah.
So what happens is our prices go up.
Yeah, or the waiting list gets longer.
Yeah, or the waiting list gets longer. So people generally pay more. Like companies and people will pay more to work with us sooner.
I'm sure a lot of creatives have also found, especially during the hard times that we're in at the moment, is that, you know, they've had to change their pricing. So we've recently dropped our prices down because we had a gap to fill because we lost work at the start of the pandemic, and you know we've worked through that and we've got to you know more steady place now. But a lot of people will use that what's the word I'm looking for? That sort of.
It's just the economic backlash.
Yeah.
I don't know what you mean, but like
you know you see what your schedule looks like. You see in your diary how busy you are and how many things you've got to do, and you price yourself based on that. So if you have got no work, nothing, but you need work, then you say, right, okay, I need to take on a project quick, so I'm going to drop my prices down. And then you say, right, I'm overloaded with projects. You know, if people want to work with me, then you know they're going to have to pay a premium. Or if people are willing to wait, which quite often most people, when they get in touch with the designer, they want the work sort of here and now.
Yeah, it's generally, especially with a brand. I think as well, it's important to say when we talk about dropping prices, it's not loads. It's just making it affordable to the economy. So there's a huge difference between us working with a small business. Like let's, for example, a fake one, like a bakery. If it's local and it doesn't net much and the value that we provide monetary, we can sort of put a metric to that through how much they've earned, like as a business. So when we rebrand them, the idea is it's called profit value, isn't it? So we value our price through price value. So it's value-based pricing. But if we're working for something like, a huge company, let's say ridiculously like SpaceX, like from Elon Musk, who I'm currently really, really, into right now, obsessively into, to be fair. If I was to be doing that with him, like, working with him, well, I'm not going to charge the same I'm going to charge a small business in a local town, am I?
No, but I imagine if you were working for SpaceX, they'd firstly have some serious turnaround times and also be wanting a lot more than probably just
there's a lot more
basic bakery logo.
Of course, there's going to be a lot more responsibility with that, but it's still the same thing. Yeah. It's still the same idea behind it, which is value-based pricing. Yeah. Now with trends, I'm going to go back onto this. So I want to how do you think? And sorry about the echoes and reverberations, guys, but how do you think Naomi trends come about?
How Naomi trends come about?
Now, how do you think Naomi trends come about? I said that completely wrong.
It's
Hashtag
okay.
Dyslexia or whatever you want to call it.
I don't know. I think it's just popular things, isn't it? It's somebody thinks something works and somebody thinks something's cool. You can take it back to the primary school playground. Somebody had a certain thing and that was it. Everybody wanted Beyblades. Do
you remember Beyblade?
Jelly alien thingies where they were just weird. There was like elastic band things and cat's cradles, whatever it was, or whatever came up,
Beyblades were
that
the
was
best.
it. That was the popular thing, and then
absolutely-
eventually it got banned by the teachers because you weren't
Remember
doing.
Pokemon cards?
Yes, this isn't the reminiscence show.
Naomi's not just calling me darling, she's my wife as well, in case anyone's confused. Like, someone who works with me is calling me darling.
Yeah.
That's my title.
Not in the workplace.
If anyone else was going to come and work for me, I shall be known as the High Wizard.
Not just darling then.
No, my official title is High Wizard. I can't really do that. I sound like a cult, like the Will Pack cult.
Yeah, a little bit.
That's what we should call our studio.
No.
That would be a trend.
Listen.
Sorry.
So that's how trends and fashions come about. Really, is somebody likes something and a group of people agree. This is great. What a good idea, or what a good thing.
Do you reckon
And then
that's how it comes about?
Then it grows from there hugely.
Because
hugely.
I think that's a natural form. So, for instance, Beyblades were targeted towards children.
Sure.
So they, on the adverts, I don't think they're allowed to do them anymore. But you can't show a child like 50 kids with them, and then one kid without, and then you could like have an infographic of that kid just crying, and then all these 50 kids are doing really
bully tactics.
Yeah, like bully tactics. That's exactly what it is, though. Because you see, Kanye West, some of his clothing is amazing. He's very influential. So if he wears something that is just ridiculous, people, not everyone, but he could start a trend. Long line, I think that was like Harrison told me, who was our friend, said it was from Kanye,
Yeah.
which he started a trend
But there was another sort of
because of his influence.
Kardashian thing, socks over heels, with wearing whatever they were.
Yeah.
And you just, sometimes you see these fashions, or you look at you see catwalk images, or Paris Fashion Week, and you just look at some of the clothes and just think, who would wear that? Like, why is that a thing? Where did that come about from? But
it's odd, isn't it? I think with design trends, for me as a graphic designer, how do I see them? How do other people see them? And why do people use them? I think the answer to those questions is, if a huge company does it, because an agency such as Pentagram, which is a huge design agency, they're really good. They rebranded Yahoo recently, which was insane. I made a whole video about it on my channel, actually. But if someone starts doing something, like a company that's influential, people will follow that. That's the way it works. You see it with Apple. So Apple have a very, very strict sort of sense and strict guideline of what goes out. The logo is so simple. The type is so simple. You know what the packaging will be when you get it. Ever since Apple started doing minimal packaging and design, everyone else has been doing it.
Could you not just say, though, that Apple are, the popular kids, and the other companies want what the popular company has and wants to be more like them, and wants the same technology?
It's true. I mean, it's a game of cat and mouse when it comes to this sort of things. Because you got like Samsung, who iPhone was the proper first consumer smartphone that people loved. It had the iPod. It had a touch screen and a phone in it and a computer in it. It was the first of its kind for Apple. Aside from one of those other ones, they created one years and years ago, which wasn't very good because you had to use a stylus. But the idea behind these things with companies like Apple, and you've got like Samsung as well, is you start to realize that they're copying each other in different things. So they're just looking at the user base. But Apple does have this sort of level of design that everyone else is trying to compete with. Every single product is trying to compete with it in some way, whether that's simplicity, the iPhone UX.
Here's an idea.
Yeah,
so
go on.
if Apple bought out a circular, so not a rectangular, not a square, but a circular iPhone next year.
What do you mean circular?
Like as in
like a disc,
like a disc,
a coaster,
like a coaster. Yeah,
a small plate.
Yeah, maybe circles are on where maybe I need the 2D.
Okay.
The 2D whatever. So Apple bought out not a round, a circular coaster type iPhone, and it was more ergonomic for your hands when you type in, and you can play, games with it as a steering wheel and all the rest of it.
Okay.
Would other companies follow suit?
Well, I would have to say yes. So do you remember the first iPad?
Yes.
Okay, so people would be like, why would other people do it? Well, Apple was the first company to do a proper tablet computer. And I remember the day I saw it that I wanted it, and I got it, didn't I? My mum and dad, who were very kind, got me it for college. I went to study business administration. For anyone who doesn't know, I thought I was learning business studies, but in reality, I was just learning how to become a secretary, which wasn't bad. I learned some business, lingo in there. But I remember seeing it on TV, and then all the news articles were talking about it. And I was looking online from, I think, my iPod, because I had an iPod Touch, the first generation of those as well, which was pretty crazy. And what I found was that, what I found through the iPad was that people were saying it's ridiculous. It's just like a giant iPhone. Why would you ever want to use it? But what happened was it became one of the most popular Apple devices in the world, and it still is now. They added things to it. Having a giant screen means you can do so much more. So Apple actually back then, if you look back, it seemed ridiculous to have that.
Yeah, it was like a hybrid, wasn't it? The size of a laptop screen, thicker than a laptop screen at the time, but with the apps that you would get on a phone and the abilities that you get on a phone.
Yeah, and even then, Apple didn't always have the App Store. So I remember having the first iPhone, not iPhone. My mum and dad wouldn't let me have one. It's too expensive, but we got the iPod Touch, which was everything but the phone.
I remember that. Clunky.
It was clunky, yeah, but it was actually quite thin for what it was. And it didn't even have an App Store. No. That was like an update later. And like nowadays, we wouldn't even think twice. We would know that every single tablet has an App Store. But the moral of that is that Apple created the iPad. And I'm sure there would have been other tablet companies out there, such as, touchscreen computers. But it was nothing compared to an iPad. And they started off the tablet wars. And ever since especially with the new iPad Pros, they have always been king of tablets.
Well, if you think 10 years ago, so, let's say 15 years ago, so 2005, how many people would have had an iPad or, a similar tablet thing? No one, hardly anybody.
Yeah, I'm trying to work out. iPad Pro release. No, iPad release. I'm trying to work out.
Well, it would have been like 2007, 2008, I'm sure.
First iPad release date. Let's have a look. I'm just looking online. So the 3rd of April, 2010. So I must have got it for my birthday.
2010 was the first
2010, so 10 years ago it was introduced. And let me just see. There's images of it on here. I'll just bring them up. I'll let you see them. So you can see it was like so thin, and the bezels were so thick, and it had an app for YouTube directly in it. You don't get that anymore.
That's mad.
It didn't even have an app store.
Well, there you go. So
is that the app store?
10 years ago, people didn't have these tablet computers.
No.
And nowadays, they're hugely popular. So it was a product that came out that became trendy because it was functional.
Yeah.
And because it was trendy and functional, people bought them, and more people bought them, and people upgraded, and people bought them for family members and friends or, whatever. And it became a staple, didn't it?
It did, yeah. That's the thing. I remember first getting it, and my parents like, why do you want it? Like, what's the point?
I'm just thinking that when I sit in bed with my iPad and I'll play Hearthstone, or I'll go on me apps, or watch films or stuff, and I always remember sitting in my bed when I was a teenager with my laptop, and my laptop would be like just like breathing out such hot air from like being nasty, sat on the bed. And I was always petrified I was going to set on fire. But if it had come out earlier, there would have been a need for it in that sense, because
Well, there was always a need. I think Steve Jobs. So the interesting thing I've read somewhere, I can't really cite from where I've read it, but it must have been in his book actually. He said that they created the iPad before the iPhone. So the iPad was actually.
You told me about that. I'm sure.
So the iPad was actually created because they were trying to do multi-touch gestures in capacitive touch screens, which means, do you remember the old touch screens, right? They had to physically press that really hard and it was inaccurate and you'd use a stylus. My dad had one.
Roughly.
Yeah, so that was like a pressure touch screen. It was like a plastic screen. So Apple were trying to create a multi-touch screen where it would use the electrical bits of your fingers, if that makes sense. What's it called? The current, the normal electrical current from your fingers to control the screen. It would be more accurate and you could put up to like 10 fingers on the screen and it would know that there's
no
10
good for
fingers.
people with 11 fingers then. Up to 10 fingers.
Well, I mean, you can have two hands and then your big
And a
left
toe,
toe.
yeah.
But the idea is that they created the iPad first, then they had to miniaturize it because they realized that it would work really well, but they created it. And it's in the book. I will try and find the link to this book. I think it's Steve Jobs, the one that Steve Jobs is talking about. It was on a video as well about Apple, actually. I think one of their software designers were on it because they were showing Mac OS on a huge version of an iMac, and they were able to move it around with their fingers. They shrunk it down to an iPad and they shrunk it down to the first iPhone for the multi-touch, and that was a game changer. Back then, you can see that we've got an image basically on the screen. This is when it's going to get so much easier with YouTube. We've got an image on the screen showing the iPad, the first generation, with the New York Times on it as well. So it was a full website on the iPad, which was a game changer, that you could have like a computer in your hand.
That you could access the internet with.
Yeah, that you could access the internet with.
Yeah.
Now, obviously, we've gone into the whole iPad thing now. So what I'm going to try and do is find it. So I want to see what Steve Jobs said about the iPad, just because I think it would be interesting. First iPad announcement. Okay, so a lot of people gave so much flack. I just want to find this one.
I bet he got laughed at. I bet people were just like, it's ridiculous. We have phones, we have laptops, we have computers.
People literally making memes before memes, talking about like having an iPhone to their head.
memes.
I mean,
oh yeah, trying to take a picture with the holding up your iPad.
No, that came later. I don't think that iPad had a camera on it.
No, I don't think it did. But that was those. I remember those.
Meme, yeah.
Those were funny.
So, because people are like, it's just a giant iPod Touch that costs twice as much. People didn't have the same brain as Steve. So let's watch this and see what he says.
Get to the main event. I chuckled when I saw this.
So that's Steve holding a tablet, like from God. Moses bringing down the tablet.
But before we computer, Apple actually invented the modern laptop computer with these PowerBooks. It was the first laptop that had a TFT screen, the first modern LCD screens. It was the first laptop that pushed the keyboard up, creating palm rests.
It's weird, isn't
and
it?
had an integrated pointing
Let me just
device.
skip it across a bit, just to see.
Use laptops and smartphones now. Everybody uses a laptop.
Yeah, you see what he's doing. He's showing that everyone's using, like everyone has a laptop and a smartphone. So
and how they're going to merge.
Yeah.
Is there room for a third category of device in the middle? Something that's between a laptop and a smartphone.
Ooh.
And of course, we've pondered this question for years as well. The bar is pretty high. In order to really create a new category of devices, those devices are going to have to be far better at doing some key tasks. They're going to have to be far better at doing some really important things. Better than the laptop, better than the smartphone. What kind of tasks? Well, things like browsing the web. That's a pretty tall order. Something that's better at browsing the web than a laptop?
See what he's doing?
Okay.
It's what you were talking about as well.
Enjoying and sharing photographs, kinds of tasks.
Right, I'm skipping it along. Okay, so I'm just going to pause it there. They thought that having a netbook was the answer. Like these companies created a smaller laptop that you could walk around with
a keypad and all the gubbins with it.
Yeah.
Which
is ironically is what Apple are doing now with the iPad. Yeah, I just bought that £300 keyboard.
That
Yeah,
ridiculously expensive case.
yeah. So hang on, let's carry on.
But we think we've got something that
Here we go.
is.
I think this is the bit.
And we'd like to show it to you today for the first time. And we call it the iPad.
Check out them graphics though.
That's a keynote presentation as well. There's applause.
Let me show it to you now. This is what it looks like. I happen to have one
Where's the
Just
applause?
with that
right here.
with that screen showing the screen up on the screen, I bet people would have thought that when they saw that was just sort of like the size of a phone. I don't think they would have thought straight away what
No.
the size was.
Yeah, it's very difficult to show. So he always gets it out. Steve always gets it out. But you can see during this, when that happened, and you guys are going to have to go watch the video yourself, it's called Introducing iPad. And it's like 4 minutes long. When he shows the iPad coming out from on the presentation display, no one's clapping. They're a bit taken aback by it because
What,
it
at this
looks
point where
like
he's going to get it out?
it looks like an iPhone.
It does look like a phone. It looks like a squarer phone.
Yeah. And it also, the name iPad, people were taking the mick out of it. Obviously, I'm not going to talk about that, but we're a clean podcast here. But the idea behind that, the people were taking the mick out
Did
of
they
it.
cheer him afterwards? Because they have gone quite
I don't know. I don't think so. Let me have a look. See what happens.
Here. That's what it looks like.
Someone whistling in the background.
Very thin.
There you go.
So yeah, he's shown them the scale of it now.
So, give you a little, and you can.
Yeah, I think I'm just skipping along.
Better than a smartphone.
Neat.
It's pretty interesting though, seeing it and seeing what they did, and everyone sort of backed onto that. So I think the market looked at an iPad and was like, yeah, I think we could have an iPad.
Yeah, something you can have in your bed and watch a film on, and it won't get red hot.
Yeah,
You
but
know,
Samsung and thing,
standalone.
they took it. They took the idea of the iPad, didn't they?
Yep, doing
And they
what the
made-
popular kids were doing.
Yeah,
they wanted a
Microsoft.
bit.
Yeah, everyone wanted to do it because they realized there's a huge advantage to having one. For instance, it was only half a year ago when you constantly took my iPad to bed whilst I was at my computer at home because it was such a faff putting on shows on your MacBook on it.
Also because on having my MacBook, laptop, whatever, on the bed with the kitten would just walk all over it. So
Yeah, exactly. And we had a kitten at the time.
Yeah.
So I bought you an iPad and you still use that to watch media.
Every day.
But the crazy
Use it
thing
every
is,
day.
and I know we're slightly going off topic here, but the crazy thing is that iPad was generally created for a media consumption device, which was you could watch the news, videos, look at web pages, and you could do some basic note taking and listen to music. That's what it was. It's crazy to see how it evolved into a media creation device.
absolutely,
Nowadays.
hugely,
With the Apple Pencil, the new keyboard, trackpad, and
all the apps.
all the apps. Yeah,
Amazing.
LumaFusion, huge app, video editing app.
I don't think when he right here seeing Steve bringing out the iPad that he would have thought in a million years that it would basically replace paper for designers and architects and
Well, It's funny you say that. I think in his book he says that.
Do you reckon that he did?
Yeah, he said that.
Well, he
it
probably
would.
did, to be fair. He's a very smart guy.
The only thing about this is that and this is why everyone started to get annoyed, because Apple have made a few statements before about, the iPad. They said, you don't want no, I think it was the iPhone actually. He says, all of these touchscreen iPhones, you've got to use a stylus. And you don't want to do that. Why don't you just use your hands?
Yeah. Styluses break, they get lost, they get stuck under the sofa.
But then they created the Apple Pencil because they realized, obviously, that they're what do you do on paper? You don't just read, you create media. So they went from content consumption to content creation on the iPad. Now, I'm hardly on my iPad consuming media. I do it on my phone.
No, you've always got your Apple Pencil in your hand.
Yeah, I've always got it.
The thing
there.
is with that has a purpose. So styluses before, when you were just, typing to somebody, I remember I had a phone with a stylus and it had a little slot within the phone that you put the stylus back into,
Yeah.
and it rounded off the corner of it.
You had that phone.
Yeah. And if you lost the stylus or it got broken and stuff, my goodness, it was a pain.
I think I remember that phone. Was it pink?
Yeah, like a pinky purple.
That'd have been when you were about 12.
Yeah, I know. And everybody had different kinds of phones. So you had a BlackBerry, and I think it was a Nokia. I think.
Yeah, you had a pink Nokia.
And then I had an LG. There was so many different colours and styles and everything of phones. And then now everybody's phone looks the same. Unless you got a case on it. If you've got a pile of phones, it's going to be a pain to find yours.
That's true, actually. It's very strange, the whole trend thing that's come out from not just like, design, but in tech. And you can see, other companies stealing designs from Apple. I won't say stealing, but gaining a lot of inspiration from Apple for tablets, phones, and also just the way that they are. Very simple.
You read a good book about that recently, didn't you? Was it Steal Like an Artist?
Yeah.
Of how people incorporate, like these big companies and seeing how they do it and how they incorporate that into their own work.
Yeah, that book was a pretty crazy book because it makes you think. The title, obviously, is very cleverly done. It makes you think what artists shouldn't steal. But in reality...
Because steal's a very negative word, isn't it?
Yeah, but in reality, anything that I've done has already been done. I've just got a different idea to it. So if you see something... anywhere, like a design, whatever it is, it's already been done. So they've got an element of inspiration through copying, but they've added a new flair.
Well, so they say you can't say a sentence that hasn't already ever been said.
That's right. I mean, I don't know if that's right. Maybe I could definitely, because of my dyslexia, I could definitely spout something out, but I wouldn't do it on the podcast.
I'll have to fact check that.
But yeah, so it's very interesting to see what's going on, like in the whole community. But I think we're going to leave it there for this week's episode. It's been 42 minutes.
Amazing.
I hope anyone who's been listening to this has enjoyed it. If you don't know who we are Will and Naomi Patterson. We own a design agency in the north of England. Is that correct? My geographic location is correct, isn't it, Naomi?
It's like a police questioning. Is that your address, your name and address? Yes, it is.
And the plan for this is called Everything Creative, because we're going to talk about everything that's possibly down to creativity, not just design. So you can come back every week. That's the idea. Every week we'll be doing it on here. I'm going to try and get them onto YouTube as well, maybe do them live in the future. And then we're going to have a lot of guests coming on as well, in person and online. So make sure you stick around for that.
Absolutely. And have a think about, your opinions of trends and... if
let us know.
Yeah, absolutely.
Follow us on Facebook and YouTube and Twitter at my handle, Will Pat.
And, make your own mind up about what you think about the dynamics of it all.
Yeah. What do you think? So in one word, because everyone seems to do this in podcasts. Right, in one word. No, one sentence.
Okay.
3 words. Okay, short sentence.
Flippin' heck, pick one.
I will. Okay, so 3 words. How has this experience podcasting been? Has it been fun? Has it been hard? Annoying?
It has been.
That's it. Brilliant. Thanks everyone for watching. We'll catch you in the next podcast. Subscribe, whatever you do with podcasts. I'm really not too sure, but hopefully you enjoy it. I'll see you on Twitter. Goodbye, everybody.